Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our last, but certainly not least, Inclusive Design 24 2020 presentation, brought to you in partnership with our platinum supporters rather, Barclays Access and Adobe, our gold supporters, Intopia, Tetralogical, and Infoaxia, and our silver supporters, Intuit and WebAble. You can follow us on Twitter at ID24Conf, and if you have questions for our presenter, you can tweet using the ID24 hashtag, which we'll be monitoring for Q&A at the end of the session. Also, a reminder that ID24 is a respectful community, and you can find our code of conduct on the inclusivedesign24.org event site.
Next up, we have Billy Gregory, who's probably needs no introduction, right? Going to be talking with us about UX, breaking up with bad design. Billy?
This is Billy.
A picture of Billy Gregory.
Handsome guy, right?
Not really.
If you haven't figured it out by now, that handsome dude is me. I'm Billy. When I was younger, I didn't know what I wanted to do right away. I tried being a rock star.
A shirtless Billy on stage.
That didn't work. I tried being a wrestler.
A bloodied Billy lying on the ground.
That was a really bad idea. After a bunch of false starts, with maybe a little nudge from my mom, I was on my way.
Billy's mom celebrating his leaving.
Where to, you ask? Well, wow, that's a bummer. Okay, technical issues. That's not a big deal. Hey, everybody, my name is Billy Gregory. You know what you just missed in the rest of that talk? You missed a whole bunch. Like, I can't believe the whole talk was in that last 30 seconds of video that didn't play. So thanks for coming. My name is Billy Gregory, and that's that. No, look, this talk is called UX, Breaking Up with Bad Design. What I was about to say in that was I wasn't aware at that point in my life that I was about to meet the one. I was about to meet something that was going to change my life. I was going to meet something that made me think differently, act differently, behave differently, work differently. It affected my personal and professional careers more than I ever could have guessed. That one was accessibility. And I was all in on this. I was all in to commit to accessibility. Unfortunately, in order to commit to that relationship, I had to break up with myself first. So this talk is called UX, Breaking Up with Bad Design. I've got the word you on the screen right now. When I'm talking about you throughout this presentation, and I'm going to be kind of animated at points because there's a lot of you in this talk that I'm going to be saying, and there's got a lot of finger pointing, but I want you to pretend that the computer screen that I'm speaking to right now is a mirror. So you, when I say you, is me, unless of course I'm talking about you, in which case the you I'm talking about is you and not me. Got it? Cool. Okay, so I'm going to be taking some liberties throughout this. So I want to set some ground rules before I really get off and running here. I use the word design a lot, and I misuse it. Now, of course, when I say design over the next 4 or 5 hours that we're together, I mean UX and visual design, okay? We know this. It means design. However, I'm also going to misuse this word when I'm talking about coding choices, because sometimes we're designing our HTML, we're designing our CSS, we're designing our code. But I'm also not really going to be talking a lot about examples. There's very few examples in this talk. This talk isn't about that. This talk is on a much higher level. So I'm also going to be using the word design to talk about life choices and plans. And you know, 2020 being the dumpster fire that it is, we know that things don't, it's fine, I'll usually work out the way we want them to, right? That's cool. But I want you to get one thing, you know, out of your mind. This is not a UX talk. It's not mostly a UX talk. It's not entirely a UX talk. Okay, it's partially a UX talk, but it's really about all of the design in our life. And it's about my design in life. I'm not going to teach you anything in this talk you don't already know. In fact, I'm hoping that you're going to ask yourself more questions than I'm going to ask you over the next 40 minutes. So this talk really isn't about me. It's going to be about all of us. It's going to be a combination of all of the lessons I've learned and that I've watched others learn throughout my career. I've just put them all under the umbrella of me so I can take the heat for the industry. But first and most importantly, more than anything, I want you to remember that this talk is a love letter. It's a love letter to our industry. It's a part love letter and part apology. It has always been my dream to star in a romantic comedy. To quote Eric, not the kind of, or to paraphrase Eric, I don't want it to be the kind of talk or romantic comedy that lands somebody in jail. But I do like those romances. I do like that, chasing the inevitable, having to reinvent yourself, pick yourself up off the ground and start over kind of, love story. And that's what this really is. This is my love letter to our industry. It will not be a sex tape. But I gotta warn you, I am going to be drawing a lot of parallels here between personal relationships and design. I'm going to be using my own relationships as a backdrop and my own story for the most part, but I can totally appreciate and dig that this might not be a comfortable topic for a lot of folks. So I just wanted to give you that heads up. Now, I'm not going to be getting too heavy into the relationship side of things, but I did want to give you that heads up that maybe some of you might find parts of this less comfortable. So when I was thinking about this love letter I was writing, and I was thinking about this story of the relationship I've had with accessibility throughout the years and design by extension of accessibility, I started thinking about all of the things that I normally do over the course of any project or job or relationship. And I started looking at them more carefully. And I realized that time and time again, I had a lot of repeated behaviors. Things that I needed to change. Things like I would get too comfortable and take things for granted. I would chase something new instead of making something work. I would always look for that new, easy solution. I was always worried I was going to screw it up. And if I wasn't worried I was going to screw it up, I was always thinking that I deserved better. That last point isn't always a bad thing. But let's stick a pin in that and come back to it. Do all these sound familiar to you? On the screen, I have myself holding up my dad's iPad, similar to the Say Anything movie. All of those points that I just mentioned, I needed to do something with. I needed to unpack those. I needed to break that up. And anybody that's ever broken up, it's hard. It's not easy to break up with something. You know what though? It's even harder when you're breaking up with yourself. So I started looking again, and I made a top 5 list of all of the things about me, all of the stages of a relationship and a project for me. And I started closely examining them. So I always start off when I'm in a new project saying, all right, things are going to be different this time. I got a fresh start. I am going to make this project the best project it's ever been. It's all sunshine and roses from here on out. Give me a little bit of time, and I've realized, okay, you know what, I can't do all the things that I wanted to do, so I'll just settle for good enough. It'll be good enough. This is the point in the project where I've decided that I can't do better. After a while, because I've settled and I've lowered that bar, I start falling into routine, and I get really lazy, and all of my old habits start creeping in. And then worse than that, after I let the old habits take over and everything else, I start going through the motions. This is the point of the project where I emotionally check out. I'm there and I'm just doing whatever I need to do to get it done, and that's it. And then I reach the point where, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to start over. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe I need to change something. But change isn't always easy or fun. And it's not something we all do easily, or that everyone can do easily. So I realized that I had these 5 things that I needed to change. And I figured these 5 phases were good enough starting points for me to initiate some change. So I made a list of 5 things to change about me. I started with those not so new beginnings, and then good enough, old habits, going through the motions, and starting over again. So let's start with those not so new beginnings. Tell me if you've seen this movie before. This isn't actually a movie, but it feels like one we've all starred in. One with the tagline that says, I'll be, they'll be, things will be different this time. We've all probably lived a movie similar to this at one point in our life, where we've started something that we thought was going to be fresh and new and exciting and a life changer. And then after a while, it wasn't. And I've realized that, unfortunately, I'm the common denominator in a lot of this. So now, before I start any new project, there's a list of questions I ask myself to get the most out of me and out of the project. But before we get into that, sorry, I'm a little ahead of myself. I'm excited here because new beginnings can be exciting. They can be this chance for a fresh start. They can be a fantastic enabler if we're looking to change something about ourselves or a project, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons. So now here's my questions. Before I start a new project, this is what I ask myself. Why do I want to do this? What is it about this project that excites me? What is drawing me to this? And if it's a paycheck, if the answer is a paycheck, you're in the wrong industry for that. Not because there's no money in accessibility, but because that isn't the reason why we're doing this work. What can I bring to this project? What does my skill set have that it can lend to this project? What can I bring to this? What can I do to elevate this work? And what can it bring to me? What can I learn from this experience to take away that I can apply to the next time? And am I ready for this? Am I ready for the commitment to accessibility? Because accessibility isn't a safe harbor for us to hide out in. There's people that really, really need what we do, what I do. So I need to make sure that I'm ready to make that commitment to folks. And then I got to ask myself, well, what did I learn the last time? What are some mistakes that I made that I can try to avoid? Or what are some things that I did really, really well that I can try to bring forward with me? And then finally, I asked myself, what's outside of my control? What are some of the things that I can't do anything about that I'm going to have to learn to live with in this new project or job or whatever else? Some of the things that are outside of my control might be a difficult client, the culture of the new job that I'm starting, the culture of the client that I'm working with. All of these things are things that I cannot change. And then once I have this fresh start, I got to remind myself over and over again, I can't fall back on my old bad behavior. Why am I bothering to start over if I'm just going to allow myself to repeat the same mistakes that I've made over and over and over again? Because each new job I do, each new project I take on is a chance to do something a little bit better than the time I did it before. I can't waste that. I can't just start over just because it got too hard last time. Because that isn't learning from your past mistakes. That's really just running away. On the screen, I have failure to launch. My mom loved taking this picture. I'm leaning back and my mom, who just turned 80, is sort of pushing me out. She's a little happier than I wanted her to look in this photo, but I guess she was just reliving when she actually did get to shove me out of her house. It was only about 2 years ago. Sometimes we are the problem, though. Sometimes we are the accessibility community, we're the problem. You want to know why? Because we make this stuff look good. Sometimes people think accessibility is easy. They think accessibility and UX by extension, there are these easy career paths they can take. Because our underlying concepts are relatively straightforward. We need to make things work for everyone. That makes sense. And it's a relatively easy ask. So maybe the concept behind, the idea behind accessibility and accessible design might be straightforward, but understanding the nuances behind accessibility is not. There's nothing easy about it. There's nothing easy about making a website work for everyone. The concept of everyone is staggering. And I think too many people just look at the surface level of what we do for accessibility and assume that it's easy. Now, I'm not just saying this to gatekeep. By all means, events like this make it easier for folks. But I don't want you to enter into a relationship just because you think it's an easy relationship. There's nothing easy about this. It takes work, and you got to be prepared to do it. Speaking of a new job and starting there, sometimes we don't see the warning signs until it's too late. I want to tell you a story about a job that I had a couple of jobs ago. And I started at this new position that I thought I was being hired on to build accessible sites, to build accessible products. This is back when I was a front-end developer. As soon as I got there, I saw the red flags. First day, I wanted to start this new job, new project, whatever you want to do, think about that. And then immediately you start getting pushback about accessibility not being a priority. Next thing you know, you're like, okay, you know what? Maybe it's not a priority, but maybe I can change things. Maybe if I stick around long enough, I can make it work. I can be the one that turns this thing around. And then after a while, with enough sort of negative pressure back on you, it changes you. We start watching ourselves taking these shortcuts. We set or allow low expectations of ourselves and of others. We stop speaking up. And then lastly, worst of all, we settle. So I made a list of top 5 reasons that I had to break up with these new beginnings, that I had to stop doing them. 1, I got to stop seeing these red flags because the constant pushback over the course of my career is exhausting. I want to be around, and I'm not saying that I'm not up for the fight, but I got to know that I have a team to fight with. I can't fight against my own team if I'm trying to push accessibility forward. Sometimes they're not as serious as you are. Don't ever, ever lower your standards to meet somebody else's bar. Keep doing what you need to do to make things accessible. Sometimes a new job or a team is holding you back. So you start making these small concessions. These small concessions lead to bad habits. These bad habits lead to bad design. Sometimes it's just moving too fast. Sometimes there's rush deadlines or unrealistic deadlines or people not taking your feedback seriously enough. Everything moves so fast that you just can't keep up. It's destined to fail. And then lastly, sometimes there's no commitment to change or growth. Now, this unfortunately goes both ways. When you're entering a new relationship with something like accessibility or design or any kind of new job, you got to commit to change and to grow into your team as well. It's a big role to grow into. And then, of course, you want the organization that you're joining to grow with you and to enable your growth. Without that, there's really no point to continue. So around this point, once I pushed through the new beginnings, I start settling in. I've realized that, okay, it's the same crap that I did last time. Let's just push on. I heard this term, good enough, probably about 12 years ago now, when I was working in an agency, and I kept hearing it all the time. Good enough, good enough. And I started unpacking, what does good enough mean? I started hearing things like nobody's complained. There's no such thing as perfect, or if it ain't broke, or it's worked this long, we can't, you've heard them all. All of the excuses why you don't bother, moving along and making something the best it can be. And I started thinking to myself, what the hell is good enough? What does it mean? My friend Henny Swan has this amazing analogy that she uses in a lot of her UX presentations, where she compares a potato peeler, the old school metal potato peeler versus the OXO Good Grip potato peeler. And she uses them to sort of show that one is, it's good enough, it gets the job done. The other one is more inclusive because it's comfortable for everyone to use. This, to me, is a perfect example of good enough. It's not good enough. It's uncomfortable. It's clunky. It's a crappy solution. It's the bare bones. You set the bar as low as you can go. When I think of good enough, I think of the bare minimum. And when I think of the bare minimum, I think of things like bare minimum color contrast or target sizes, alternative text, keyboard support, font sizes, focus indication. You understand what I mean here. I've already put more work into this list than most developers put into their code. Bare minimum isn't good enough. Actually, if you want to be, because bare minimum is like a gateway, and it's a gateway to something that someone once said that I beat to death. I said it, some user experience or sucks. It's a gateway to doing the bare minimum routinely and to leave a lot of people out of the equation because it's good enough. It works for enough people. Who cares? So I came up with my top 5 reasons that I had to break up with settling for good enough. Because I realized that if I kept doing it, I ended up designing to meet a checklist. I wasn't designing for real people. I was always saying, I'll fix it later, but I never did, ever. When I aimed for the bare minimum, that's exactly what I got. There was no pushing. There were no great moments. There were no successes. It was just finishing the job. When you set the bar low, people are going to trip over it. And I don't want to introduce more obstacles. Lastly, I told myself, I deserve better than good enough. We all deserve better than good enough, because good enough is not good enough. In fact, if you want, my honest opinion, good enough is the lowest possible setting on giving a shit. It shows the bare minimum of caring about people to say it's good enough. That's why I had to leave it behind. Then I started thinking about my old habits. At this stage in the project, this is where my old habits start creeping in, because I've been beaten down by good enough for so long that I realize that I don't need to try. So I might as well just let my old behaviors creep back in. So after a while, I'm together with this project out of habit. I'm going back to the same tired designs over and over and over again. On the screen, I've got the Die Hard poster, and it said, "Old habits die hard, 40 years of screwing things up." That's sort of my life story. But when I thought about these old habits, I started wondering, why do we do this? We know it's not great. It's like there's this built-in level of comfort or something where we can keep going back to it without really having to push ourselves. It's like we've convinced ourselves that we can't do any better, that we can't find a better solution. So we just roll with it. I picked on this many times in my career, and I'm going to pick on it again. We all have those accessibility hills that we want to die on. Mine are carousels. Now, I know that Sarah Higley has a great YouTube video all about the tooltips. And I don't say it's great just because she compliments me in it. It actually is a really great video. But focusing on carousels for a second, ever ask yourself why we use them? Nobody likes them, right? They suck. They're bad for UX, but we keep going back to them time and time again. It's like this hellscape that we just can't escape. I said it before that really it's a bunch of crap going around and around and around. And if I want to see a bunch of crap going around in circles, I'll look at a toilet or watch NASCAR. So we go back to the well time and time again. We figure, you know what? It worked once. It'll keep working. That's fine. But it doesn't always work that way, right? We know that just because something worked before doesn't mean it's still the best solution that's out there. We can't rest on our prior successes. The industry, will continue to move on without us. This one was a hard one for me to digest. When I stumbled across this one, it really hit home for me because, in 2017, I had this talk about some user experience or sucks, and I did it a bunch. It was really well received. People seemed to dig it. And I kind of rested on that. I coasted on that talk for a little while, and I did nothing else. And then I realized that, wow, I've done nothing in the last couple of years. Now, there was some burnout attached to that, and I got busy at work and a few other things. But at the end of the day I got lazy. I got lazy, and I let this talk sort of carry me for a bit. And, in the meantime, assistive technology, design, browser support, and user expectations continued to evolve without me. And I was playing catch up, and I realized that I had taken myself out for too long. And then I realized that I'm always listening to the same voices. There are so many new, amazing talents out there in the accessibility scene that are great. And if we're looking at this from a testing perspective, we don't want to rely on the same pool of professional testers over and over and over again. We want to make sure that we're testing with new people to get new perspectives all the time, to get their opinions. So then I started realizing, you know what, maybe it's time that I saw other people. I needed to get out there. I needed to put myself out there, and I needed to see the world, because I wasn't learning anything going to work, moving the needle barely every day, and then going home and sitting on my couch. I needed to get out there. So that's when I put myself out there and I started seeing other people. On the screen, it says date night, break old habits with old people or with new people. And it's me and Jennison Asuncion standing beside together, and underneath it says, when Billy met Jenny. Apologies to my girlfriend, Jenny. But I did meet Jennison first. But point being, I got out there. I started attending meetups and camps. I saw other people. I found, my people. I found people that believed in the same things that I did, people that wanted to do the same things. And it stoked this fire in me, and it helped me move and realize and grow a lot more than just sitting at home and, developing these bad habits ever did. So I made a list of reasons why I needed to break up with these old habits. When I started milking all of my past successes, I realized I wasn't making any meaningful, new contributions. I wasn't doing anything. I already mentioned Sucks earlier. That was a big one for me, realizing that, look, I love Sucks. I love the concept behind it. I'm really proud of it, but I got to be more than the Sucks guy, for no other reason than I don't want to be called that. I can't go back to the well. I can't keep doing the same old thing time and time again. I can't start every project with the same boring templates. I can't do the same boring designs that I know aren't really great. I've got to see what else is out there. I've got to try to push myself to do better, because it will hold me back. These old habits will hold me back from learning new things, from trying new designs, new concepts, or meeting new people that will inspire me. Resting on these old habits, they just gave me these, sort of tired, poorly implemented designs and code and everything else. And I realized that I needed to stop doing it. Because after a while, I found myself comparing what I was doing against the work of other people. And I really didn't like what I saw. I realized that I was becoming bitter and jaded. I wasn't the same person that I used to be. And it wasn't because people were doing things and they were doing it wrong or bad. It's that I wasn't doing enough to make myself feel worthy of comparing myself against them. Now, I'm not a big fan of comparing myself against anyone. But sometimes it's inevitable, and sometimes it's a trap you find yourself falling into. So I realized I needed to focus on myself. I needed, instead of resenting folks, I needed to learn from them. I needed to talk to them. I needed to get out there and meet them, engage with them, and learn from them. This is the most dangerous phase for me. Phase 4, going through the motions. At this point, I am checked out of this relationship, this project, this job, whatever. For me, going through the motions is worse than good enough, because good enough showed that I at least had some emotional attachment to the project. This is the absence of caring when I'm going through the motions. I'm just doing what I need to do to get this project out the door, and that's that. This isn't even good enough. This is sub-good enough. And when we do things like this is like when we assume a solution, it works for one people, it worked for everybody. So it's like, you know what? I tabbed through the site. It's fine. It's somewhat keyboard accessible, so it probably works for screen readers. That's fine. Maybe we're not playing our role in creating an accessible product. Maybe we're just, punting it, sort of letting it slide by our desk onto the next person, just assuming that somehow accessibility will get added. Maybe by development, maybe QA will catch something, maybe just we'll find some magical plugin. And it's almost like we treat accessibility as an afterthought or a gesture. Code cannot fix everything. Ian Pouncey, dear friend of mine, said it best years ago, and I've quoted him in several talks. When he said that, I'm going to paraphrase here, but he said that, maybe developers aren't the most important people when it comes to developing accessible applications. And he's right, because we can't do this. Eventually, if we let code try to fix everything, there's only so much we can do, and we have to start retrofitting. We have to start using these bizarre ARIA combinations, or we need to sort of fix things weirdly. I'm going to do my best to describe what's on the screen. It says warm apple pie, or WAP. There's a young man and his dad sitting at a table with the remains of an apple pie sitting between them. And beside that, it says roll equals WAP. I'm going to let you all figure out what happened to that pie. I'm going to stay out of this one. There's this saying that says apathy breeds content. And at this point, we are apathetic. We are just doing nothing. But you know what the problem is? I don't think apathy bred contempt. I mean, it does, obviously, but I think it bred something worse than that. I think our apathy as an industry bred overlays. I think us not caring enough to move the needle and to make accessibility happen left the front door unlocked, and people came in and started changing things. They started trying to come up with these easy silver bullet solutions because we weren't doing enough fast enough to fix it. Now, I'm not saying we're entirely to blame for this, because this kind of opportunistic behavior is going to happen regardless of what we do. But I'm not saying we made it any harder for them either. Actually, a while back, Henny and I, when we were talking, we were goofing around about web components and typical sort of, components we find. And we mentioned date picker and drag and drop, and Henny sort of off the cuff remark said that they sounded like dodgy internet dating sites. So we made these goofy little logos. So we took one dating app and we made the date picker logo out of that. And then we made drag and drop because that sounded like another, dating app. So I'm going to introduce a third one to this list of topics. But this one's a gross app. This one's the grossest app we could ever find. This is an app that you're going to want to wash your hands 1,000 times after you use. My friends, I introduce Overlay. The picture on the screen is the classic Burt Reynolds picture with the word overlay. It says, "We like it" on top. So I realized that there was I needed to sort of break up with going through the motions here. Because if I didn't, I was going to stop trying. I was going to realize there was no more spark in the relationship. There was no more spark in what I did. I wasn't motivated to try hard anymore. And I wasn't invested. I was starting to coast. Now, I'm not saying that every single day has to result in some kind of career-altering moment where you go home feeling like you just solved the internet. But there should be an underlying sort of respect and love for what you do. And when that goes away, maybe it's time that you sort of reevaluated your own relationship with design. We can't treat accessibility as a gesture. Someone's need for access is never a nice to have. And we can't make assumptions about accessibility and the people who need it. We need to test with real people. We need to talk to real people. We need to get the people that are, those people using our work and helping contribute to that. That's the only way we're going to move the needle. And then lastly, I moved on to starting over again. Again, this is the phase where I realize, well, I can't fix this, so maybe I should start thinking about my exit plan. And sometimes, it's not the job's fault, it's not the project's fault, it's mine. Because I'm an old dog. This is my dog Ollie on the screen, and he's not really happy with me calling him an old dog because he's only 3. But sometimes, I've realized this about myself. I have this sort of fear or reluctance to change or to improve or evolve. I get lazy, I feel like I'm too old to do this. My work hasn't kept up. And at some point I had to ask myself, am I really an expert anymore? Was I ever really an expert? Or am I just somebody who knows a bunch of stuff? I feel like we throw the word expert around a lot in our industry just because we're somewhat knowledgeable. But if we're not on top of everything all the time, we can't really be experts. We can be good at certain areas. And sometimes we identify areas or sort of barriers in our work, but we're not, really willing at this point to sort of go back upstream and fix them. Maybe because we're afraid, maybe because we don't know that solution, so we let it slide by. We're afraid to ask for help because we've been identified as the SME in our organization, and we don't have that answer. Maybe we resist new strategies or new technologies or even new best practices, again, because we're not entirely sure how they work. And you know what? There was a time in my life where I thought it was me, but it wasn't. It was not me. This was in 2009. jQuery was just sort of taking over the world at this point. And this was like sort of at the start where just being really good at HTML and CSS just wasn't good enough. It wasn't cutting it. JavaScript was sort of creeping more into the front end stack, and the web was just changing and evolving rapidly. Now, I was, back then I was a father of two. I had just gotten divorced. There was a lot going on in my life, but I had also met accessibility. I'd been doing accessible design and coding for a couple of years at this point, and that's really where my interest lay. So I knew I had to keep up with the other stuff, and I did, but my passion was accessibility. So I talked to a colleague about it. I talked about wanting to pursue it. And they told me this. They said, you'd be better off pursuing a career in JavaScript. And that stung. They were telling me that I was too old and I was past the point in my life where I could make a difference and chase this sort of new career. And then I realized that they weren't saying this because, they didn't think this about me. They were saying this because they believed that about themselves. And they were projecting on me. They were trying to bring me down because they were too scared to take that next step in their career and do something that they were passionate about. This rang with me when someone said this to me a couple of years ago. They said, you're too old to do better. And you know what? I started thinking about that, and I realized that's not true. You are never too old to do better. I took some of the biggest risks I ever took in my career in my mid-30s. I started an agency job. I did a whole bunch of freelance work. I was learning all kinds of things. I got it more into accessibility. Hell, I did my first conference talk when I was 40 years old. On the screen, I've got the 40-year-old conference version with myself looking very excited about speaking at my first conference. So I realized that I needed to break up with starting over again. I realized that if I didn't, I was just going to keep resisting new strategies because I didn't know how to properly apply them. I wasn't going to acknowledge the gaps in my own skill set. I was just going to keep, starting a new project instead of trying to figure out the solution and fill those gaps. I was letting the opinions of other people influence my work. Their negativity was weighing on my design by saying, oh, we can never do that. That's too hard. That'll take too long. All of those things. I let it get to me. And then there are times where I didn't let the opinions of others influence me. I didn't listen to the community. I didn't listen to the experts. I didn't listen to people that I really should have been listening to because of my own ego, or maybe I knew everything at the time, or I was too stubborn. And then I realized I don't want to be a gatekeeper. I don't want to be that person that blocks the road for other folks to come up, because there are a lot of, great new voices on the scene. I don't want to gatekeep. I want to hold the door. I want to be the one that helps elevate people, that helps new talent. I want to do what Jennison does. Jennison is a great community builder. We need more Jennisons in the world, and we need less gatekeepers. So what have I learned from all of these top 5 lists? Well, I've learned that I love accessibility, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it. I've also learned that I'm at a stage in my life where I can be open and honest about what I want. I've learned along the way that if there's one thing in this world I can control, it's letting go. I can choose when to stop doing something. I can choose when something's a bad habit. It may take me a while to identify it, but I can make that conscious choice to stop it. And I've learned that with my relationship with accessibility is a two-way street. I need to give and take. I need to keep feeding accessibility. I need to keep nurturing it. I also need to learn from it. It can't be all just give, give, give. I have to sit back and I have to learn to accept what accessibility is trying to teach me sometimes. And I've also realized that I have more questions than answers. Like, what if I was the unsupportive one in my relationship with design? What if my own insecurities were what they're holding me back from allowing my work to fully grow into the most complete version it could be? What if my own bullshit was weighing me down? So what's next in good design?
I'm not sure. I don't have those answers. But I'm no longer afraid to ask the questions. I know that this isn't the final version of this talk any more than we are final versions of ourselves. We're going to learn, we're going to grow, and we're going to change. Because if romantic comedies have taught me anything, it's that to really be with the one, you gotta break up with yourself first. That's it for me, but I want to thank Jenny Heisler, my kids, my parents, Henny Swan, Adrian Roselli, and all of my exes. Thanks, everyone, and good luck.
Wow, Billy. That was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that talk with us.
I warned y'all it wasn't going to be a UX talk, right? Like, I'm going to stop my timer now so I don't pull the Patrick Lauke and do a 4-hour and 5-hour talk. Yeah, I hope I didn't bum y'all out at the end of the day.
Quite the opposite. I feel invigorated and inspired.
All right, well, they're good. All right, everybody, don't ask any questions. Just go fix the freaking internet already and call it a day.
Well, I hate to disappoint you, but I do think we have some questions that came.
Oh, crap. What questions could they possibly ask for me pouring my heart out? Well, go ahead.
I'll take a stab at that. I felt like you were taking everything I feel in my soul, if I had one, and like saying it out loud. So thank you so much. That was such an incredible talk. I'm wondering if you have any advice for folks. Have you noticed any kind of early warning signs when it comes to like recognizing I'm about to lose the spark? Or do you not really notice until after it happens?
That's a tough one. I mean, I guess there can be warning signs, but I think that's one of those things that like you don't know it until it's gone, you know? And it sucks. I mean, I don't mean to use that word version of the word sucks, but it stinks because it's one of those things where, you know, you could be cruising along and then just all of a sudden, but I mean, looking back, some of the warning signs for me was my temper. Not getting the same joy out of things. And I think if I really had to dial it back, I stopped engaging with the community. I really retreated off Twitter. I dialed back on the social media. I just realized that what I used to love just wasn't there anymore. So I don't know that helps answer that question, but that's definitely, looking back, those are the warning signs for me that things that I used to be really passionate about, I was just kind of like, whatever.
Yeah. That makes sense. Totally. What about for folks who have kind of found themselves showing up for work and in the first, it becomes pretty obvious pretty fast that the job you were hired to do and the job they told you were going to do and the job you applied to do is not the job that you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. What do you have any advice for that, dealing with that?
You know, I've done that several times in my career. Honestly, if it's a bad fit, you're wasting everybody's time. It's no different than being in a bad relationship, right? If you know that it's not the one for you, you're not going to do your best work, and they're not going to get the best out of you. You know, it doesn't mean that the job is bad. It doesn't not always mean that the job is bad. I mean, sometimes there are some really evil places to work, I guess, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the job is bad. It just means that it's not a good fit for you. So, I mean, you know, it's really flippant and easy for me to say, find a new job. But ultimately, I think that's the only thing that's going to make you happy is to, chase that.
Absolutely. What are some of have you ever had the experience where maybe the job was a bit difficult, but maybe things started turning around at all?
I haven't had that, but I can imagine a world in which that would happen. I think, I hate to say it, but I mean, we have these wonderful people in the world like Lainey Feingold, who's out there fighting the good fight. And I mean, maybe it's not the enabler of change that we need, but maybe it's, what's that Batman, the hero we deserve or the hero we need, whatever. People like Lainey are that, and maybe whatever makes something change, great. I mean, I'm a big fan of change at all costs, and if that's what brings it, then I could see it happening.
Absolutely.
It's like the longest non-answer ever, I think. Yeah.
I will give Jennison a little shout out here. I'm privileged to work with him, and he is definitely an agent for change.
Yeah.
So it's an honor. Eric, those are all the questions I saw or have. So I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Thanks. Yeah, another member of the Jennison and the Lainey fan clubs for sure. Card carrying member. So my last question, Billy. I heard that for those who are interested in such things, that there is a conference that went virtual this year that is happening soon. Is that something you're familiar with?
There is. I wasn't going to mention it out of respect for the wonderful, amazing conference that you have put on over the last 24 hours. I think if I can, before I get into my own horn tooting, I would like to toot yours for a second and just commend you all on another amazing event for ID24. I know from past experience how hard these events are to do. And you all just knocked it out of the park again. You got a great team, great event. Now, enough about you. Let's talk about me. Yes, I'm one of the organizers of an event called A11YTO. We do have our A11YTO conference coming up. We've got actually a whole week of events coming up. So our main conference is going to be 3 days. It's going to be all virtual this year. Some of the speakers are up online right now. We haven't really kicked our spam machine into high gear just yet, but you can expect that very soon. I'm really pleased about all the speakers that we have lined up. We've got more being added all the time. We've got our conference, which is all about digital accessibility. Then we have gaming, our A11YTO gaming event, which is all about accessible gaming. That's going to be on Saturday, October 24th, I think. That's a free event, so if you want to sign up, you can check that out. And then we haven't announced it yet, and Jenny is probably sitting there, you better not say it, but IRL is going to come back. We just haven't announced it yet. So we will have our real life built accessibility event as well that week. So stay tuned for that announcement coming soon. And then I'll probably throw a bunch of other announcements in there too, because I can't just stop at that. But yeah, so we do have an event. You can go to A11YTO, A11Y.TO, or oh my gosh, A11YTO.com. We do have actually .to as well, but all the information's there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Billy. And everyone, this is Inclusive Design 24. Thank you so much to our speakers for taking the time to deliver an absolutely amazing lineup of talks. Thank you to our hosts and our volunteer co-hosts. Melanie, it's been absolutely wonderful getting able to deliver these talks with you. Thank you so much. And just before we break for the post-conference wrap-up, just a little bit of some housekeeping. If you enjoyed this session, like I did, please hit that like button, smash elbow drop, Billy, maybe a flying haymaker, that like button on YouTube. And you can also subscribe at youtube.com/inclusivedesign24. That'll help you stay in the loop for our future events. And as well, just a reminder that Inclusive Design 24 is brought to you with thanks by the following supporters: Barclays Access, Adobe, Intopia, Tetralogical, Infoaxia, Intuit, WebAble, DeQ Systems, and Adrian Roselli, LLC. This concludes our talks, but please feel free to tune in for the after show starting at the start of the next hour. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.